All right, well, next we have the Sonoma Valley Collaborative, and I'd like to introduce, as Hannah's promoting those folks. We've been looking forward to this for several months now. So I'd like to introduce Caitlin Cornwall of the Sonoma Ecology Center, Colin Thoma of Disability Services and Legal Center, Ann Colachidas of Golden State Manufactured Home Owners League, John Hennelly of Sonoma Valley Hospital, and Blanca Escobedo of Greenbelt Alliance. At least according to my notes, they're all here. So we'll hear from all those folks, or at least I imagine several of them.
Well, I'll jump in. Good evening, everyone. I'm Caitlin Cornwall. I'm the project director for Sonoma Valley Collaborative. And just in the wait for this item, we have a little bit of change in casting. Celia de la Cruz de la Rosa is stepping in to speak for the hospital instead of John Donnelly. He had to leave. And we've also lost Blanca from Greenbelt Alliance, but I have her statement. If I could just jump in, what I would like to do is just spend a couple minutes describing what Sonoma Valley Collaborative is, and then ask some of our members who are here to say just very briefly what their involvement means to their organization. And then I would like to very briefly run through for you the main statements that Sonoma Valley Collaborative has made about Sonoma Developmental Center, because I think that's the main topic that is bringing us here today. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works the first time. It's always nice when it works the first time. Oops, sorry, I always do that. Okay, is that working? Okay, great. Thanks, Arthur. Sonoma Valley Collaborative is a forum of community leaders from across a wide range of sectors in Sonoma Valley. And what we do together is find solutions and take action to address our community's biggest challenges. And the point of the collaborative is that there are some issues facing the Sonoma Valley community that are too big, too broad, too cross-cutting for any one organization or sector to tackle on their own, and that we need a group of groups to tackle them. So our scope, as I said, is Sonoma Valley. We're defining the valley as the watershed, the basin. So of course, Glen Ellen is right here. And so we're going from hilltop to hilltop, from Oakmont down to the bay. So we have a bigger geographic purview than your MAC does. So these are the values that really drive Sonoma Valley Collaborative, and we very explicitly put every statement and decision through this value set. It's based on the definition of a sustainable community, which rests on these three pillars: environment, equity, and economy. And the idea is that if you have a healthy environment, if you have good social well-being for everyone, and if you have economic security, then you've got a sustainable community. Without one of those, you haven't. So we spend a lot of time working together to find common ground among these three E's. And we're looking always for what we call the highest common denominator among those three value sets. And so we don't make any statement or take any position or pursue any project that does not advance all three of those things. So this triple basis for a sustainable community is also what really defines our membership. So this is a slide showing our members, and it's a little more than 30 organizations. The membership shifts slightly over time, and we're always kind of in the process of gradually growing the membership. While we were all meeting in real life, as we all used to, we really wanted to keep the number limited so that we could have meaningful interaction. Since the time of COVID, we have decided to be more open about membership in the collaborative. So if anybody is involved with an organization that represents a distinct interest group or sector in Sonoma Valley, we'd definitely be open to talking about taking on new members. So this graphic really shows what the point of the collaborative is. There are really not that many things that all of these entities can agree on, but the things that they can agree on are pretty important things, and they're usually pretty hard things, and they will take a lot of people at the table to work toward. And those are the issues that the collaborative works on. So we make decisions using what's called practical consensus, and what it means is that on any particular statement or decision, if everybody can either support it or can live with it, then we go ahead. But if any member really cannot live with that decision, then it does not go ahead. So all the statements that we make, all the positions that we take have been through this filter and are kind of the few statements that all of those 30 or so perspectives can either agree on or can live with. What we're focusing on currently, a lot of it has to do with housing affordability. We went through a whole process in 2018 and 2019 to do a lot of listening across the community, many different kinds of parts of our community, and decided to have a sustained focus for a while, at least, on housing affordability as a thing that affects every single sector of the community in a very urgent way. So this first bullet is what we call our housing declaration. Every word in this declaration was fought over and agreed to after a lot of conversation. So the kind of homes and housing that Sonoma Valley Collaborative supports is housing that is affordable for people who live or work in the Valley within already developed areas to create diverse, safe, complete neighborhoods. So we're involved in learning about and having opinions about the housing policies that affect the Valley, and the county and the city are both doing their housing elements right now. So we're paying attention to those. And there's a lot more that we're doing on housing that I don't want to get into right now, like trying to protect existing homes that are affordable, that whose deed restrictions might expire, issues like that. Don't want to spend time on that right now. And we're also paying a lot of attention to Sonoma Developmental Center, because Sonoma Developmental Center, while providing an opportunity for a substantial amount of affordable housing, also rings all the other bells too: environment, economy, equity. As we all know, it's a huge big deal for Sonoma Valley. And then we're also doing backstage stuff to just try to build the collaborative, especially supporting youth and their voice and many other things. So I think that's okay. So before I move on, that's my description of what the collaborative is. And now I want to ask our members who are here to just quickly say who they are and why they're participating with the collaborative. So why don't we start with Celia, if you wouldn't mind going ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, Honorable Supervisor Gorin, to be here. Mr. Dawson, the chair, thank you so much. And Caitlin, great presentation. So the hospital supports the forum that the collaborative provides to learn, to listen, to share, and provide input. We find that the intent of the organization, it spreads across everything that the Valley is a part of, becoming, and looking forward to being. So being a part of this conversation is important to us, and we find it to be a good place for the hospital and what the healthcare district is all about to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. Colin, would you like to go ahead?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Colin Toma. I am the Citizen Change Advocate with Disability Services and Legal Center. We serve a good portion of the North Bay. And being part of the Sonoma Valley Collaborative and being on the council is good to make sure that the SSC and development in the valley can reflect the needs and issues of people with disabilities. And make sure they're addressed in the development plans to make sure that it's accessible and inclusive to them as well as everyone else. So it's good to be that, and hopefully we can get some housing that is ADA accessible as well as affordable. Those are two huge issues we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Yes, I'm just seeing your chat, Hannah, and I don't know what to say about Anne. I do have her statement though, so I could read it. Yeah, we lost a couple people because we started later than expected. So I want to read the statement that the new staff person from Greenbelt Alliance, who is serving Sonoma County, actually the whole North Bay, Greenbelt is a member, and their statement is that they participate in Sonoma Valley Collaborative so that we can achieve more of our priorities with groups and individuals that have shared values and goals, particularly planning for a more resilient areas to live in, areas that are resilient from climate change disasters and able to provide housing for all through infill, smart housing that will be accessible, safe, and affordable for Sonoma residents. Other orgs should join and participate because we want to continue and strengthen and diversify our collective voice and advocate for strong solutions in Sonoma. And I did not ask her to write it that way. She just wrote it that way. Let me see if I can find.
And through the chair, Caitlin, I think I may actually do see Anne in the
great.
attendees overall. So I will go ahead and promote. One moment.
Okay. There she is. We don't hear you yet.
Now you can.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. My name is Ann Colachitas. I represent mobile homeowners in Sonoma Valley and also now in the county. Representing my sector on the collaborative council has been really an invaluable experience. As an advocate for mobile homes, we were able to elevate our profile as an important source of unsubsidized affordable housing that's existing in Sonoma Valley and beyond. And now, thanks to the Sonoma Valley Collaborative, we have expert consensus on the importance of mobile homes as a housing stock, and that was published in the report Homes for Sonoma Valley. So that was really great. Mobile homes constitute a stable housing stock for seniors, working families that give a pride of ownership while being affordable. Mobile homes also have churn within the community, where meaning that they turn over, providing continuous affordable opportunities for living in the valley. This is in stark contrast to single family residents, where there's very little turnover and the wealth is often extracted out of the community. So, the council members provide opportunity to hear the perspectives from all sectors. In the case of housing, this lack of housing stocks that is accessible and affordable to the 60 to 100% AMI cohort is a big problem for a wide swath of people. We hear from everybody, from the hospital and health center to the churches, to the Chamber of Commerce, the fire department, the LaLuz, the Visitors Bureau, winery, students, seniors, teens. The whole community is affected by lack of affordable housing, as Caitlin said. And so this is where we've come together in this collaborative for this diverse group of local voices committed to addressing the most critical issues facing Sonoma Valley. And Caitlin's really done a great job with kind of herding cats. So sorry to characterize it like that, but really she's a fantastic leader. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anne. So I would like to just share my screen again and show you what Sonoma Valley Collaborative has said about Sonoma Developmental Center. And then you may have questions for us. So back to my slideshow. Okay, so in general, well, the way we've been approaching the developmental center process is we've been seeking points that all or most interest groups can agree on And then we advocate for those outcomes. We've written 2 letters so far, and we're about to write a third. There was also agreement on Sonoma Valley Collaborative that we should help highlight voices that are often not heard in land use planning efforts. So we specifically sunk a fair amount of time into working with teens who we found at Teen Services, and met with them a total of 3 times now and produced a letter from them, which we took them on a field trip to the SDC and walked them around, and that was really cool. And then we've also assisted these other members to understand the process, understand the decision points, and write their own statements. Laluz, Collins Organization, Sonoma Valley Housing Group, and the hospital. So those are generally how we've been proceeding. And then specifically, these are some of the things that we have said in our letters. And none of this is going to be very surprising, because with a membership as broad as we have, we really are only going to have consensus on pretty centrist things. So, homes that are accessible to people who can't afford market prices in Sonoma Valley, that's kind of an obvious one, rent and own. We really want to see a diversity of house prices and styles that work for a lot of different kinds of households, but focusing on ordinary size homes for households who live there full time. There's nobody on our council is interested in second homes or big homes. Very strong support of the open space protections, wildlife, water. So going on, definitely a elevation of housing over historic preservation. Not that people are opposed to historic preservation, but our members definitely have a higher priority on the housing, and particularly that if there are going to be, second point here, if there are going to be jobs on the site, that they should be at a much smaller number than the amount of housing. Like the site should make a positive contribution to the housing crisis, and not just more jobs plus more housing. That's not necessarily going to fix the housing issue. There needs to be more housing than jobs by a long shot. One of the things that our membership has talked a lot about is that we want high quality neighborhoods where there are different kinds of people mixed together, different household incomes and sizes and ages and races, and that a neighborhood needs services also. So this is a list of some of the community services and amenities that we have advocated be included in. Many of these are in the latest version. And then another point that that the collaborative has made, and maybe this is a little bit of me wonking out on this, but the economic feasibility analysis so far in the process has been super narrow. Really, the only funding sources that have been looked at are market rate housing and a hotel. And what many people in the community, almost everybody in the community, really wants there isn't those things, it's other things. And so those other things are going to require different kinds of funding over the long haul, like government funding or philanthropic funding, to make the more public good issues happen there. So that's another point that we've been making. And that's it. This is my backup slide. That's it. I will stop sharing my screen, and back to you, Arthur.
All right, well, thank you, Caitlin, and other members of the collaborative. And I appreciate your presentation. And there's not a whole lot there that I personally would disagree with. So it's good to hear it laid out like that. But I want to, I might have a question or two, but I want to open it up to other council members first for questions or comments. Yeah, Councilmember Handren.
So I'm impressed with the diversity of your group and your advocacy for all the people in your in the community. And I'm wondering if you have any tips for us to increase our diversity and the people that we reach and participate in our meetings.
That is a fantastic question. It's something that we work at pretty hard. It takes a lot of time, and it takes really, I think it takes going to their places, going to their meetings, going to their conversations, and building a relationship and listening. And even now, we don't have young people coming to our meetings. If we want to work with young people, we go to teen services at 3:30 on a school day and try to make the conversation sound interesting enough for them to be part of it. People are busy, so you have to go and do things the way they need them done.
Thank you, Caitlin. Councilmember Dickey.
I have a number of questions. So should I just go through them, or how should I proceed? Just go for it?
Just go for it, yeah.
Beautiful. So Caitlin, this is the first presentation you've made to the MAC. And in general, I would say to the Glen Ellen community. And so you're saying you're collaborative because it's in the title of your organization, but I personally don't know anybody that's a member of your group. You have 30 members, and I've lived in this valley for 40 years, and I don't know anybody that has even participated with you guys. And I don't want to hear about, oh, it's because you live in Glen Ellen, or, you know, I'm affluent, or some sort of nonsense like that. I mean, this feels like it's been done in secrecy. And I think I would like you to address some transparency if you could.
So
Sorry.
so the collaborative kicked off in 2017, right after the fires. And we very consciously were looking for organizations that could represent interests, like interest groups, you know, youth, health, emergency, business, environment. And it was really only later that we started thinking about geographic representation also, which is sort of another layer, another way to slice the valley. And we do actually have a North Valley representative. And I don't know if she's here. Is Tracy Shorey in the audience? Tracy Salcido in the audience?
She was here earlier. Yeah, she's probably still here.
Maybe she could speak to this.
Through the chair, would you like me to
Yeah,
promote?
you can go ahead and promote Tracy if she's ready to talk.
All right, I see her hand raised. I'll go ahead and promote to panelists.
Looks like you're on, Tracy.
Yeah, you just need to unmute.
Oh,
there you are.
Hi. So I actually spoke with Caitlin earlier today, and I thought I was going to be part of the panel that she was presenting.
and I apologize. There were just too many people coming on and off. I just forgot. I do apologize. I meant to.
I have been the Glen Ellen regional representative for the Sonoma Valley Collaborative for going on 2 years now. And I just recently have kind of come to an understanding of how this thing works. And I apologize to Glen Ellen that you don't know more about the fact that I've actually been talking with the collaborative and with the council about Glen Ellen's interests. And I've been doing that following on what we did as a community with the meetings that we've had for SDC. And that, just to be brief, that's the main reason why I asked Caitlin to join, was because, you know, we're talking about SDC. And SDC has a lot of housing, and Sonoma Valley Collaborative is talking about housing. And I felt like it was important for Glen Ellen to have a voice on that. I may not be the best voice. And that is something that I hope that this group will, if they can't tackle it now, they can tackle later. Just talk about, you know, how best Glen Ellen and Kenwood and Oakmont, all of these voices are heard on the Sonoma Valley Collaborative.
Thanks, Tracy. I have a quick question that might sort of clear this whole thing up a little bit, or not clear it up, but you know, going forward, would the MAC be a potential member of the collaborative?
Sure.
Could we join?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that, but that seems like an ideal way for us to be connected in.
Questions?
Yeah, so back to Councilmember Dickey.
So, Caitlin, again, there are 30 members of this group. There was no support offered by Sonoma Collaborative towards the Glen Ellen or MAC letter that went to the supervisors. Is that because the 30 members of your organization didn't agree? You were saying earlier that you didn't do anything unless they all agreed to it. So are we to assume that that was the reason?
Well, there was a lot in your letter. And there were parts of it that didn't seem exactly consistent, but the bigger issue is just that the collaborative meets once a month, and we just didn't have, we literally get an hour and a half a month with all those people. And we spent that time finding consensus sort of from the inside out, from, you know, our membership, instead of having them, I mean, many of our members did read your letter, and it helped inform what they brought to the collaborative table. But with the extremely limited time that we had, we just felt it was more important to have the crosstalk among our members, who are different, you know, because they're whole Valley members, than to just have our group respond to what your group had come up with. I mean, you know how much time it took you guys to come up with your letter. We just had to prioritize the time that we had. I think there's, you know, there's a lot of overlap. I'm sorry?
It took us less than 3 weeks to
Right,
come
I
up
guess,
with a letter.
yeah. I meant in terms of hours. Yeah. There's a fair amount of overlap. I mean, all of our, I could put in the chat, all of our statements are on this one page of our website. And so you can see what we have said. It's not wildly different.
Well, I would say the density proposals are different, and which is
We don't
chief
have
amongst the concerns.
We don't
you
actually
know?
have a density proposal. So there's not consensus on Sonoma Valley Collaborative for either a number of houses or a density. What there
So
is,
in the private meetings that you have with Permit Sonoma, you don't discuss housing density?
the private meetings that Sonoma Valley Collaborative has had with Permit Sonoma have been about helping get youth voice represented, potentially partnering on meeting to get Spanish speaking voices represented, which they then decided to just do on their own. We haven't had like secret access to Permit Sonoma. And we haven't had, like I say, we have not had consensus on. So I showed you all the statements that we have made. There's nothing in there about numbers. There's nothing in there about density. There's not even a number about the percent affordable, just that we wanted it higher than the original versions.
And I would agree that there's very little distinction between what we want and what Sonoma, your collaborative group is proposing. And so I'm wondering why you've chosen to differentiate yourself from, like, the Glen Ellen community. I mean, one person as a community participant seems like a meager voice considering the impacts. But I do have another couple of questions, and then I'll let somebody else go. So you mentioned mobile home construction. Is that part of the proposal that you would encourage at SDC, would be mobile home construction?
That's not part of anything that the collaborative has said about SDC, but it is part of, so we have this whole deeply researched blueprint for, it's called Homes for a Sustainable Sonoma Valley. It was written before SDC started its process. It's about increasing the amount of housing that's affordable in the valley as a whole.
Yeah.
And in that paper, one of the many recommendations is recognition of and protection of existing mobile homes, mobile home parks, mobile home residents, because it makes up a pretty substantial portion of, as Anne was saying, non-subsidized affordable housing. Nothing that we've talked about in relation to SDC.
And so it leads me to another question, which is that when I looked through the list of groups, I didn't really see anybody that's in the construction world. And, you know, adaptive reuse, despite what you might think and your group might think, is a very, very affordable way and a broad spectrum of both impacts and financing for providing affordable housing.
Yeah.
And yet your group has said, basically, we're rejecting that concept.
No, actually, so I didn't put up every single point in every single one of our letters, but there is, I didn't think this was a major one to put in the slideshow, but there is a point that's been in one or maybe even both of our letters that we support deeper analysis of, you know, any buildings that are appropriate for repurposing and reuse. That is in our letters. We have not tried to take a position about like whether we know how much or which buildings or anything like that. That's not something that we know about. But what was the thing you said before repurposing? Oh, we do have a construction person on the council, Roger Nelson from Midstate Construction, relatively new member. And he's built, commercial projects, market projects, and also 100% subsidized affordable housing projects.
Yeah, I think they were responsible for the housing near the charter school on Highway 12. Correct?
I think that's right.
And I think they're also the ones that are going to do the affordable housing project proposed on El Verano Avenue, adjacent to the hotel.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Okay, so thank you for your time, and I will step back.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Councilmember Newhouser.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I did see Midstate Construction logo on your sheet. I think it was the last one. But I was going to ask you if Sonoma Valley Unified School District is part of your collaborative.
Yeah, they definitely have been. I can't remember if we decided to leave on or take off their logo for this presentation, but we've, you know, the school district is in a world of hurt. So we don't have like a person right now because our main point of contact we've had, you know, a couple superintendents, a couple board members, a few other staff people being our main point of contact. And right now we have no one because there's just so much chaos going on there. But schools as them as a giant employer, and also just everything that they mean to future.
The reason why I asked, Caitlin, and I fully support having them be a part of your collaborative.
Yeah.
And in fact, we should, you know, we're as responsible for communicating as much as you are. But there's been several ideas around relocating the Dunbar Elementary to SDC. And everybody likes the idea, but as some people have pointed out, that the school district has not indicated any interest whatsoever.
Right.
So this is a problem of a lack of communication and or involvement in getting people interested in this, and even discussing some of the pros and cons of such an idea. So I'm looking forward to that, because I haven't given up on that, and I'm hoping that will actually be seriously considered by the school district. A couple other questions. One, I just wanted to comment that I'm really, really glad that you have mobile home advocates, and I think it is a critical issue. There are several major mobile home parks throughout the valley and in the city proper that I think are seriously threatened through speculation and redevelopment. And if you take, for example, the Rancho de Sonoma, I remember the city council meeting, when was that, like 15 years ago, when the owner came in and convinced the city to allow them to privatize and sell off individual trailers and those lots therein. And if you look at that place now, it's being carved up, and it's being lost through its gentrification. So that is a serious issue. I'm also glad to hear that you have the Greenbelt Alliance supporting you. I know that, and this is going to be a difficult question because we're colleagues, former colleagues, and have strong environmental beliefs and interests. And I know through my 20 years of working in the field that usually social developmental interests went out over environmental interests. And I'm wondering how you're balancing the significant need for affordable housing, because I mean, this is kind of a layered question, but we know that if we have a dense development there, it's going to have impacts on the viability of the wildlife habitat corridor. I think we all know that. And I think that's something we haven't been able to quantify. And it's one of those big questions that's looming out there as to how that's going to be evaluated and how they set the development standard. And I'm wondering just if you could speak to how you are doing this noble effort to bring all these disparate interests together, how you're balancing that with your environmental core beliefs and interests.
The Sonoma Valley Collaborative membership includes Sierra Club, Ecology Center, and in the past, Sonoma Land Trust. We would like to have them back again. I think we can. And then many of the other people, these are all humans who many have just a long history in Sonoma Valley, even if they're representing whatever, La Luz or the Chamber or whatever, they really care very deeply about the beauty and health of this place. And that's why something like the collaborative can be more successful in a small place than in a big place, because we care about all parts of this valley. But because every member has basically veto power, because of the decision-making approach that we use, it means that the collaborative cannot take positions that are environmentally destructive. So like in our housing declaration, there's a phrase in there that says we support affordable housing that's within already developed areas. And that, there's a lot of ways to interpret those words, but the intent is there, that the belief is, the support is there for increasing density in places that have already been developed. Another key phrase that's in our homes report is that the different already developed parts of the valley should share in the burdens and the benefits of being urban places. So we shouldn't, put all of the needed housing in the Springs. It needs to be shared among the different parts of the valley, the affluent, the less affluent. And so, but the tension that you speak of is present on our collaborative also, which is exactly why our statements do not get into specifics about how many houses and at what density, because we have disagreement about that, and we're not going to resolve that. So, and we don't try, but there's so much that's important to do that actually is agreed on. That's the big thing about the collaborative. There's so much that well-meaning people in the valley agree on that we all need. We need to act like it. We need to work together on those things and not let the things we disagree about divide us too much.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin.
Other questions or comments? Let's see. So just to follow up on my earlier question, would there be a process if the MAC wants to, we would need to, we've been talking about re-upping our ad hoc committees, and one of them might be housing. And so I could imagine that would be the perfect connection with the collaborative. We have somebody from that ad hoc attend, or more than one person. Is there any process, or do we just tell you we want to be part of it?
I think it would just be a conversation that you and Tracy and I could have. And I would just want to make sure that whoever is coming on and the MAC in general is really familiar with our charter, and what it means to be a member of the
Nope, you froze.
Count this Sonoma Valley Collaborative? It was formal.
I missed a
Oh,
little
I
bit of that,
froze?
but basically we should become familiar with your charter and then have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No big hurdles.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
No, 100
I guess I should say, the collaborative itself is not a legal entity. It is a coalition of the willing, but we have no power. There's
Yeah.
no authority. And legally speaking, the collaborative is housed under the 501c3 of Sonoma Ecology Center. Everyone agrees it should not stay there forever. But it is hard to launch a brand new nonprofit and find board members and funding and everything. So the collaborative, from the perspective of the Ecology Center, the collaborative is the way for the Ecology Center to participate in these bigger issues that go way beyond environment, but that affect the environment. And I think that's really the way that everyone who participates in the collaborative sees it.
Yeah, this stuff is also interlinked in so many ways. Any other questions or comments? We can move on. Councilmember Dickey, did you have another question, or is that just your hand?
No, but Tracy was in front of me. Why don't you go to her and then I'll ask my question.
Actually, if it's okay, Trace, we haven't opened up for public comment yet, so let me go to Matt, make sure there's no other council members, and then I'll go to you as the first public commenter.
So Caitlin, I have a question for you about affordable housing. My personal view is that we should make it 100% affordable housing. That's my personal view. And in an effort to reduce density, but increase the affordable housing. How does your group feel about that? I mean, you recognize in your statement that the financial feasibility question is sort of not supported. If we could come up with a model where we were reducing density proposals, but increase the percentage of affordable housing, how would your group feel about that?
Well, of course, the phrase affordable housing means different things to different people. So we have to talk about the details, but any member who's here, if I say anything that you disagree with, feel free to pop in. But where the consensus of the collaborative is that the housing that the collaborative members care about on SDC is housing that would not otherwise get built in the market. So, Celia from the hospital, it's not just like their lowest paid people who can't find housing, it's also their middle paid people who can't find housing. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so what we usually say is that we're promoting housing, and not just at SDC in general, from like the middle on down, which is very vague. And so is the phrase affordable housing. But in general, what you're saying is pretty much in line with what collaborative members want, understanding that we don't know how to fix the financial part.
But you're supportive of, higher percentages of affordable housing at the expense of market rate housing or anything else. I mean, we're correct.
I pretty close. Yeah. I think that's very close. I have to be, as the representative for these 30 plus organizations, I have to be very, like, all we've got as credibility is that the staff don't misrepresent the members. So I think we're very, very close on what you're saying. I would want to just run it by a little bit, but yes.
Well, I'm not going to mind the differences, so it's okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Matt. And Councilmember Eagles.
Thanks. I do have one quick question, Caitlin. You mentioned housing prioritized over jobs. And I've been thinking a lot about the jobs and housing population synergies, and if there are any that we can assume. And my conclusion is not really. We just don't know enough yet. Has your group what I mean by synergies is you could live, work on site, which would be great, but I just don't know that we're seeing any evidence that is necessarily something that can happen in any sort of formal planned way. Does your group have any views or thoughts on that? Can you speak to that at all?
We had some sort of subgroups talk about SDC issues some time ago. So we had a subgroup of our sort of business oriented members who are also like the bigger employers. And Celia, I cannot remember if you were on that conversation or not, but like the Chamber, Visitors Bureau, Vintners and Growers were definitely on it. and I asked them about jobs, you know, like what is your take on jobs and housing at SDC? And the consensus there was that they are much more concerned about the lack of affordable housing than they are about the lack of jobs. So it was sort of like, well, jobs are sort of a nice to have, and yes, they'd be nice if the economy was more diverse, but that interest is completely swamped by the emergency level issue of affordable housing. So the collaborative statements very much de-emphasize jobs. It's not like they're considered a bad thing, but the housing is so much more overwhelmingly important. Does that help?
Yeah, I just wondered if you made any assumptions in any of your assessments about jobs on site, but it sounds like that's not, what I'm hearing is that was not a focus because housing was such a priority that you didn't necessarily have the analysis like that in the context of the collaborative.
Does that ring true, Celia? Okay, yeah.
All right, thanks, Councilmember Eagles. So unless I see a quick hand go up, I'm going to move into public comment. And yes, Tracy.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to once again reiterate, you know, I've been the Glen Ellen regional representative on the council, and I'm happy to continue in that. But I think it's very important for you folks to recognize, and for all of the people that you represent to realize that for me or any representative to go to the collaborative and present the viewpoint of, you know, such a large community with so many diverse interests, you know, these are things that move slowly. And if you're talking about Sonoma Valley Unified School District or even the Sonoma Valley Hospital, you know, you got to bring these statements back to your group, right? You've got to bring them back, because you can't, I don't feel like a person can stand up and say that they represent a community when they're not, you know, they don't have that backbone. Some groups are better prepared to do that. And that's something that I would hope, you know, you guys, if you chose to, you know, take on a position with the collaborative, just, you know, making sure that you go back to the community. And that's where one of the places where I feel like I've kind of fallen down is that, you know, it's important that if we're going to be part of a collaborative, that we also collaborate amongst ourselves, and that we're actually truly representing the entire community to the best of our ability. So that's what I would share with you as you're contemplating what the NSV MAC can do.
Thanks, Tracy. And yeah, I agree. We need to stay in touch with our own community and bring that to the collaborative if we decide that's where we want to go. Other public comments?
Got a few hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and share the timer. All right, first up is Elisa.
Welcome, Elisa.
Can go ahead and unmute.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you, Arthur, Matthew, Mark, Caitlin, and Tracy for your beautiful comments. I'm here just to represent the fact that you can have faith and pray and move forward. We are collaborative as a group here in Glen Ellen and all through the Valley, and we have proven it over and over. So I want you to take heart and understand that there is no contest between one perspective and another. There's a Venn diagram here, and there are shared expectations and hopes. And I'm very, very grateful to Caitlin and the collaborative approach that she's using. And I think we have no problems in that. We just need to join together and come forward. And I'm working a lot on the remediation and the issues about the toxins that are in the existing buildings at the park. At the SDC. And I want to say that I have my finger on the pulse on that, and everything's going to be okay also with that historic restoration portion. So I'm just here to say thank you, and you know, we will move forward and stay in communication, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for being engaged and for your encouraging words. And next up.
Next up is Jerry. Jerry, you should
Welcome,
now be able
Jerry.
to unmute.
Hi, thank you. I have two questions for Caitlin. One, can you give us a little clearer definition of the missing middle? And two, what's the relationship between the collaborative and the Eldridge enterprise, which, as I understand it, has a considerable emphasis on jobs? Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Caitlin, you want to answer that? As long as we'll stay in the mode here.
Sure. I don't actually want to try to define missing middle. There's a few different accepted definitions of it. I think for purposes of just conversation, a number of those items are just meant to be housing that is for people who make too much to qualify for traditional subsidized housing, but not enough to buy a house on the open market in Sonoma Valley. And regarding the Eldridge Enterprise, the Sonoma Valley Collaborative has heard, formally and informally about a lot of the different kind of proposals for Sonoma Developmental Center, including Eldridge Enterprise. For all the reasons that I stated, the collaborative is not terribly interested in the Eldridge Enterprise. And it's not, so after hearing about it pretty much the first time, it hasn't been a thing that the collaborative has spent its time on. Yeah, but for everything that I said to Kate Eagles, the housing and housing affordability and a mixed integrated neighborhood with services that provides a high quality of life for a large range of people, that's where we've been focusing.
Thanks, Caitlin. And we'll turn it back over to public comment.
All right, next up is Claire. Should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Claire.
This is actually Jim,
Hey, Jim.
Of the Jim and Claire. And Caitlin, thank you so much for your presentation. I think that you provide such a valuable service here to the Valley, and thank you so much for your service to that. One of the things I'd like to ask, and I've heard that there is a differentiation between what we would call workforce housing as opposed to affordable housing. And my understandings of those definitions is that what we're really looking for is workforce housing. So I'm wondering if you can address that issue for us to help us understand how to differentiate those things and sort of how that fits in to the collaborative's vision of what might be possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Caitlin, you want to give us an answer?
Well, again, I think a lot of these phrases are defined differently by different people: workforce housing, affordable housing, missing middle, cottage housing, even like multifamily plexes. And people have like slightly different definitions of all these things. And I don't want to choose one or the other. And it's, most of the people, including me, who are involved with Sonoma Valley Collaborative are not housing experts and never will be. What I like to say is that all of our members are experts in what they do every single day. And what they know is how the lack of affordable housing is affecting their, whatever they do, their mission, their mandate. And that is really extreme, and they can be very articulate and eloquent about that. But I will, so for the larger employers in the collaborative, like the hospitals, school districts, the hospitality sector, and all the nonprofits too, their staff, many of their staff they don't have a low enough income to qualify for traditional capital A, capital H affordable housing, but they also cannot afford market rate housing here, whether to rent or buy. So usually when people talk about workforce housing, they're talking about those people who are sort of in between. But of course, a lot of workers make little enough that they do qualify for the Burbank housing type developments. So often I think employers use the phrase workforce housing, and groups that represent more people as wearing their hat as a resident and not as a worker will say affordable housing. And sometimes they're talking about the same prices. So a lot of it's just semantics.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Next up is
All right.
Teresa.
Welcome, Teresa.
Hi, good evening again. Thank you, Caitlin, for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I do want to say that I do support affordable housing, but I'd like to ask why the Sonoma Valley Collaborative is making consensus decisions on Glen Ellen when two major entities of Glen Ellen are not part of that process, and that's the Glen Ellen Historical Society and the Glen Ellen Forum. We do love Tracy and we value her participation, but those organizational stakeholders need to be part of that effective immediately. I also take exception to the one slide that said historical preservation should not divert funding from affordable housing. But I think that affordable housing and historic preservation can cooperatively enhance each other, and that we can also keep the cultural integrity of the property. So I don't think one excludes the other. Thank you very much for that opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Teresa. And next commenter.
Next up is Bean. Bean, you can go ahead and unmute.
Welcome, Bean.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. First, I want to thank Elisa for using a math term, Venn diagram. I always like to hear that pop up somehow or another. So I have a question for you, Caitlin, and that is with regard to vacation rentals. Does your group have a stand on vacation rentals? And I mean, just poking around at numbers, looks like in unincorporated Sonoma, we've got approximately 2,000 vacation rentals, which is a huge amount of housing stock that's been lost. And so in terms of getting more housing stock, I wonder what you guys feel about vacation rentals. Thanks.
Caitlin, you want to respond?
Sure. Yeah, this is a really good question, really illustrates what a coalition or a collaborative based on consensus can do and cannot do. So the table that is set by Sonoma Valley Collaborative is broad enough that it includes the hospitality sector and it includes real estate representation. And therefore, even though many of our members feel really passionately about vacation rentals, that there are too many of them and they're taking away housing for people who live and work here, there's not consensus on the collaborative to take a stance for restricting vacation rentals. And as I said earlier, with practical consensus, that means that a member can block, can veto. And so we have no position on vacation rentals. We've had great conversations about it that have been very informative and probably have informed some of our members' positions themselves, but the collaborative as a whole cannot find a position on that.
Thanks, Caitlin. And next commenter.
Next up, we have Alice. Alice, you can go ahead and unmute.
Welcome, Alice.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Caitlin, for all of your information. And so I'm just feeling a little confused about the collaborative in that on the one hand, it feels like the collaborative, you know, with the 30 organizations and wants to be taken as like a serious voice on, you know, the future of the SDC. But then on the other hand, when you say that, you know, you couldn't prioritize in an hour-and-a-half meeting for the once a month meeting, you know, to talk about the North Sonoma Valley MAC letter, which, I mean, that was an important document. And I think it was signed by like 1,600 people and all different kinds of organizations came out in support of it. And if I'm understanding correctly, you know, the collaborative really never even discussed it as a collaborative. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so I'm feeling a bit of a disconnect there. And yeah, that just really kind of leaves me confused. So I just wanted, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, about yeah, that it's kind of like image versus content. And I'm not really sure what I'm seeing and what I'm understanding. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Caitlin, do you want to respond?
there are meaningful differences between the North Sonoma Valley MAC and Sonoma Valley Collaborative. The geography is quite different. The SDC is happening to not just to Glen Ellen, but there's like a lot of different communities that SDC is meaningful to. So we're operating on a different scale. That's one thing. And then also just the North Sonoma Valley MAC is, everybody who lives in a certain area. That's the construction of that's who gets to have a say with the MAC. And I don't mean to tell you your business. I don't mean to sound like I'm doing that. If I do, I'm sorry. That's not what I mean, but I just mean that the collaborative is constructed differently. It's these interests, the economy, the environment, equity, and sub interests within those. And it's just going to have a different perspective than residents of the North Valley. It's quite possible that some of our member organizations signed on to the North Sonoma Valley MAC letter. I don't know. We had to go through our own process because we're a different collection of players at a different geography.
Thanks, Caitlin. Only thing I would point out is that we did get people from all over the valley.
Mm-hmm.
More in fact, I think there were about 600 people from other parts of the valley and 300 from Glen Ellen. So we did have wide-ranging geography.
Yeah.
But I understand it's a different situation. Okay, another commenter.
Just one last call. Give it a few more seconds, and I'm not seeing any further hands.
Okay. Let's see. So I think, all right, so we finished item number 6, and the next one promises to possibly be another long item. And well, before we go on, just thank you to Caitlin and to the other members of the collaborative for being here. We appreciate the contact and look forward to working with you informally or formally in the future. We'll look into that connection as the MAC, and so hopefully we'll be working together because we certainly share concerns about all these things. We're I don't see much daylight between our concerns really. So thanks for coming, and thanks for the presentation.
Thank you for the time, and thank you for just all the work that you all do, the hours that you put in because you care about your community. We're all better for it.
Thanks.
You have a good night, everyone.